Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 31, and today's topics are...
Extraterrestrial life existence, extra credits video, very retard sucks at Pokemon, Rittenhouse Trial, Privilige, Biden answering if he's running in 2024, and hypocrisy of YouTube gun nuts.
So, of course, I'm in a very, very bad mood raging at EU4 all day while you were asleep, so I want to go make fun of furry retard first! So, of course, for all of you who don't know, we're huge Pokemon fans, and Brilliant Diamond Shine Pearls came out just last week, and I've been doing a series on Shine Pearl since it came out, and oh god, it has not been a fun experience at all. But of course, a certain someone decided to try and beat the game in 12 hours and failed spectacularly, and we've made fun of him on the show before, and that's someone by the name of Verlicify, who is a PokeTuber. He is a horrible person. He's a racist, misogynist. He's everyist in the book. He's everyist in the book. He's just a terrible Trumpster. He's just a horrible person. But what makes it even funnier is he sucks at Pokemon. He literally sucks at the games. And I kid you not, he streamed trying to take on the Elite Four. And oh my god, if anyone follows Pokemon, I hope you're going to cringe at this team. Take a look at this. Empoleon, Luxray, Alakazam, and free Gastrodon! What the fuck is wrong with this idiot?
Fucking levels! Like, his Alakazam is at level 60.
His Alakazam
is a reasonable level.
It's actually over leveled. The average level for the Elite Four in Diamond Pearl and Brilliant Diamond Shine Pearl is 658. But his fucking team, free of the same kind. This is literally no wonder you got destroyed by Cynthia's Rose Raid when 2/3 of your team are weak to grass. And he lost so badly he rage quit on his stream. Fucking dumbass. Maybe learn how to make good hey, furry retard, learn how to make good competent teams like me and everyone else on my server. Maybe you wouldn't suck at the games and rage quit like I wouldn't. And you want to hear something?
For example, drop 2 of your Gastrodon and replace them with better Pokemon. Like go with my team. I started with the same Pokemon as you. I got myself a Luxray, and I'm going to have a Gastrodon. But guess what? I supplement my team with a Roserade, a Medicham, and a Staraptor.
Are you saying you're Gastrodonist?
No, he's a Gastrodon file because he's got 3 of them.
Yeah. Oh, so that reminds me.
Oh god, it's good of a female too. Oh god, that makes things worse.
So of course, this got me thinking of how my worst Elite Four team I remember off the top of my head, and it reminded me of when I first beat Pearl back in May of 2007. You want to hear how bad that team is?
Alright.
Torterra, Palkia, Yuzi, Azelf, Mashpit, and Metachan. 2/3 of my team are psychic, for God's sake.
Types.
But you know what?
Psychic types.
And not only that, pretty much all their levels were the same. Like my Palkia maybe in the low 50s. Not Torterra, I mean to say. Palkia probably like 50. The emotional spirits, remember, at 50. Metachan I just caught in the Elite Four, so it's like 46. So my team was severely under-leveled compared to what he is. But guess what happened?
What?
I beat the Elite Four on the first try for my first time ever in Pokemon.
Wow.
So I had
really cool.
I don't know about a worser team because that moveset, that combo he has with free Gastrodon is really bad. Mine's probably a little bit more balanced with Psychic. But I also, unlike him, actually gave them strong movesets. Like I gave Azelf, like Fire Blast, Thunderbolt, I gave, and Nasty Plot, I gave it like all the really good combinations at the time. And I did not do smart things back then when I was 13. But I had just as bad team and under-leveled massively. But guess what, furry retard? I still beat the Elite Four in 1 try, which was the first time ever. Although it took like 100 revives. And funny enough, it wasn't even Cynthia's Garchomp that was the problem. It was her fucking Milotic with Aqua Ring. That thing kept healing up over and over and over again because I think I forced it to struggle before finally beating it. That's how long it took.
I thought you would have had more trouble with Spiritomb.
Nope, I did not. I one-shot it, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
And then there's me. I literally had Infernape and Alakazam on my platinum. I beat the entire. I think they were like. I think the level was Cynthia's Garchomp. And I think I might have had Azelf as well at that point or something.
So, what do you guys say about me having just as bad a team as him, but I still beat the Elite Four in one go and didn't rage quit? What does that say about me?
It says you're a good Pokemon guy, and Velicify is completely fucking stupid and useless.
You said the furry retard sucks at Pokemon? He'll delete your comments for saying that, remember?
As if he's ever going to fight, as if he's going to give a shit about finding my YouTube channel. I haven't updated it in a year and a half, and nor do I ever intend to. I'm now writing fan fiction. I'm not making videos.
Yeah, you know, he'll be writing fan fiction, probably screwing around with the female PokeTubers that he wishes he could mess with.
That's probably even sadder. That's even sadder than Najee. Imagine Gavin and saying something.
I'm still mad that Smogon took my GF away from me because I suck so bad at competitive play. How about you don't...
This fantasy where I go into my local thing with a probably well done tea. I'm just gonna here for a couple of rounds of Pokemon. I come back and I'm like, I think I qualified. And then it turns out I did.
And of course, remember... And not only does he suck at Pokemon, he harasses other PokeTubers and lies about them all the time. He sucks at competitive play, he makes terrible movesets, and when he competes in competitive matches, he rage quits when he loses, and then he accuses his opponents of cheating all the time.
He sounds like Gavin.
Yep.
Only even worse, because Gavin's actually competent at Pokemon.
When you make Gavin look like a genius, that's pretty sad, furry retard. What the fuck? So yeah, you're a terrible person, you suck at Pokemon, your Elite Four team is trash. How's that trigger you? Your team is trash. And that's coming from me who used my team in Pearl. How does that make you feel? How does it feel I beat Pearl Elite Four on the one try for the first time ever with my shitty team? Oh! And as for me so far for SP, right now I'm thinking about using Miss Magus for the team, for the Elite Four, but that's it right now. I have no idea what to use for the other ones. I'm just hoping I'm not over level 55 by the time I get to the Elite Four. And of course, you already said your team, and now I feel much better after my rage on EU4 earlier. So I think we're done making fun of furry retard, and people, please don't end up like him. Everyone in the Pokemon community hates him except Longneck, so you should also tease him for sucking his dick so much, because he sucks so bad, for God's sake. Alright, so now what other top...
A couple of times where, admittedly, I said that I can't defend him.
Oh, and that reminds me...
He's not a total fanboy like his brain-dead drones.
He defended his teams before, remember? Or at least he did to me. But anyways, another thing I just forgot. Good thing you mentioned, because I forgot to mention too. He also mentioned in his stream that he doesn't want to get vaccinated. So he's one of those idiots too.
Unfortunately, vaccines may be about to be done if this Omicron variant gets out.
But it's a Chinese hoax, remember?
But say that. Tell that to the 13 videos that Cult of Dusty has made about people who played down COVID, got COVID, and died.
But all we have to do in Washington State... And I already know what furry retard will say. All we have to do is kick out all the Asians in Washington State, and then we'll be good. Especially a certain Poke girl who would beat my ass every time in Pokemon.
I would literally fly over to a state and kill him if he said that. And by the way...
You know what's sad? He actually is in Seattle.
Oh, he doesn't have to go far then to kill him.
Or maybe, we think would scare him more? Her dad? Or facing her in Pokemon?
Well, depends on if her dad has a gun or not. If he doesn't have a gun, then definitely my image. If he has a gun, maybe her dad.
Man, he really does suck at Pokemon. I angrily looking at Longneck, wondering why the fuck would you watch this piece of shit when you see how terrible he is. And you're not stupid, Longneck. You're smart at Pokemon. You know he's a piece of shit, so stop fucking watching him. God damn. Alright, so now that I'm enjoying my laughter, now what do we talk about next?
Let's do extraterrestrial life.
Okay, so this is a topic I want to talk about for like several episodes, but we kept pushing off to more important topics and all that crap. And that is, do you think life outside of Earth exists? And what kind of life would it be? Well, do you want to talk about more since you're more into astronomy than me?
Yeah, I'd say yes, but I'd also point out that about 99+% of what we're going to find is going to be microbial.
Yeah.
Like nothing, I'd say the vast majority of places we find life, the absolute most complicated you're going to get is a jellyfish.
Yeah. So for me, historically, I did not believe life exists out there, outside of Earth, because I would figure by the time this was like to like the mid 2000s when I was like a teen. I figured if there was life out there, I'm sure we would have been able to find it, or they would find us eventually. But then, have you ever heard of the video game Spore?
Yes.
I've started playing that game in 2008 and I loved it, and I found out, holy shit, the universe, just our galaxy alone has billions and billions of other planets. And I'm sure there are I don't even know how many millions of planets are like Earth out there. And that's just our galaxy. There are so many other galaxies out there, so you have to multiply it to like infinity. And then it's like the odds. That's when I changed my mind. Like, okay, there's definitely got to be life out there. But the question is, what kind of life is it? Is it like the stereotypical extraterrestrials that are just as advanced, more advanced than us? Is it something as advanced as us? If it's something less advanced than us, is it something like dinosaurs or other animals or stuff like that? Or like as you said, which is probably more likely, bacteria and such.
Yeah.
The odds are...
I think, considering how much easier it is for single-cell organisms to evolve compared to multicellular life, it would 99, as I said, almost all of it would be at the single-cell level.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the first 3 billion years of the Earth's existence, of life existing on Earth, was single cellular.
Yep.
And it wasn't until about they're going to be single cell life is probably going to be around for about another billion years longer than multicellular life.
Yep. And then, of course, another question...
So it literally gets so hot that it just bakes the water out of the ground.
Yep.
And then that'd be it.
And then another question is, do you think there's life on any of our like planets and moons in the solar system? Because we found like ice and water on Moon and... Go on.
Quite a few. I'd say past life on Mars, past life on Venus, maybe. As for present, I'd say definitely Europa.
Yeah. Ain't Europa ain't Jupiter the Jupiter moon that's covered like a massive thing of ice?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. There might be life under the ice.
At the moment, we have 5 of the 6 crucial elements for life detected there for Europa.
Yeah.
That's hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur from Io. And we're just missing phosphorus at the moment.
Heck, who knows? There might be something underneath all that ice.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
that's what we're hoping for. Also, Ganymede and Callisto, in terms of moons of Jupiter. Moving on to moons of Saturn.
Titan.
We've got Dione, Enceladus, and a tantalizing possibility of 2 biomes on or in Titan.
Yeah. Titan frame, is a moon. Wasn't it like just 100% like methane or something like that?
No, it's only like 1 or 2%, but it's the only moon in our solar system that's got a significant atmosphere and a hydrological cycle, I'm going to say, because it's not water, it's methane and
that's what I meant to say.
A couple of compounds, I think like hydrogen gas and acetylene, that are at tantalizingly unusual levels that tantalizingly indicates there may be some strange form of cryolife living in Titan's rivers, lakes, and oceans that thrive off methane and ethane.
Yep,
And
very
then, of
interesting.
course, in underneath that surface is water and ammonia, is apparently a 200-kilometer deep water and ammonia ocean. And so we may have more bacteria, another biome of bacterial life that lives off.
You there?
Yeah, I've just completely blanked on the compound. Ammonia, that's right.
Yeah, as
It
you
lives with ammonia and water.
Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned before, Mars before like had water and all like that until it lost like a few billion years ago. Venus might have had as well, and who knows? Maybe there is life on Venus too, as you might have said too. Until we get actual probes that could survive there for a little bit to explore it.
That's unlikely though. It
Yeah,
looks like
yeah, too hot and all that.
most even the phosphine I think you detected might have actually been artificial because sulfur dioxide, Venus's things part way up, also reflects light at very similar wavelengths to what phosphine does. As for any other worlds, Pluto potentially, Triton, a moon of Neptune's, and not entirely sure which one. Well, I think they're saying maybe Oberon for Uranus, but I don't think so with Uranus. I think you'd want to look to either Pluto or Triton for outer solar system objects.
So yeah, would be nice eventually and when we explore space, if we can see if that is indeed reality. And I think it's pretty much likely there is. It's just a matter of what kind of life it is, and you agreed, right?
Yep.
Now, of
But
course,
as I said, don't
that
get your hopes up. It's almost all going to be single cell organisms.
that honestly, if we contact it, we would probably either kill it somehow by disease, or it could kill us maybe too. Like that can happen.
Yeah.
That can happen both ways too.
Yeah. Most likely, that'd probably be what happened. So that disease would kill all life in the local area, and then we'd be taken out by their diseases that we got no resistance to.
Yep, just like happened other places in the world. All right, so that was a fun topic to talk about after all these months of waiting. So now, what do you want to talk about next?
Extra credits video. What's this about?
Okay, I honestly in the future we should make watch that video where they did that stupid like Nazi video. Remember where they say, "Oh, if you play like the Nazis in like a World War II game, you're just as bad as the Nazis." Remember that?
Oh God,
We should make fun of that in the future. But this is a video that I posted like 2 months ago about monetization in video games, and actually talked about how monetization changed over time, and we could see like all the all the options to choose from. Like if we ever made video games, what we would do. So are you ready to learn?
Yep.
On pause.
Recently, while Jeff was doing research on an episode he was writing about Pokemon Unite's free-to-play mechanics, he realized something. While we've covered free-to-play and some other methods of game monetization in the past, we've never done a comprehensive overview of all of the different ways video games can make money. And for better or worse, methods of monetization fundamentally affect the design of how modern games are built. So we're pressing pause on Pikachu for a moment to do a quick overview on all the different ways that the video games you play make their money. Thanks, capitalism?
Can't wait to make fun of you in the future about the Nazi video. That'll be fun.
Thanks so much to Morning Brew for helping us monetize of early game development is how a game plans to make its money to support its creators and cover development costs. Which is understandable because it's not the most fun topic, but also kind of odd because that choice impacts a ton of design decisions. But no matter what a developer or publisher chooses, they'll always consider the same two factors. What are the upfront costs for the consumer to acquire the game? And does it monetize over time? So, let's jump into the Wayback Machine and take a look at how video games have answered these questions as our favorite medium has evolved. One of the earliest upfront costs that we elders remember is pay-to-play, aka slipping quarters into machines at the local arcade. Oh, and I have next match on Mortal Wombat, by the way. This form of monetization was very straightforward, not to mention practical, because arcade machines were way too expensive for most people to buy. But with the rise of personal computers
And also, those games were designed to be very, very hard so that you'd go for your coins very quickly if you didn't know that.
I'm aware of that.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
and consoles,
I said
this
that,
changed how and where we all played
I remember them being really difficult.
and paid. Now, we could march down to ye old-timey video game store and purchase a whole game up front. This monetization method, in industry speak, is called premium games. And outside of shareware was how we bought most console and PC titles through the mid-2000s. And though online storefronts have changed where we buy games, for a lot of studios, premium is still their default option. Also, historically, premium games were complete experiences because without ubiquitous connectivity, you didn't have the easy option to sell more pieces of your game. Unless, of course, you release an expansion. Expansions, as the name suggests, takes a game and adds a lot of stuff to it. For instance, like Dark Portal did for Warcraft 2 back in 1996, or Integrate did
I know
for the
all
FF7
this in the
remake.
Command & Conquer
Most
universe.
expansions were also bought in traditional storefronts. That is until our devices got connected and added hard drives, and we got downloadable content or DLC. Now games could sell content in smaller chunks than expansions, and this was quickly embraced by developers on the 7th gen consoles, who for the first time had built-in connectivity and online stores. Some of this was great, and some of it was horse armor. Meanwhile, back in PC land, some games had been opting for a model that other mediums had found success with: subscriptions. And there are two major types. Subscriptions that provide access to the game, i.e. you can't play if you don't pay, and subscriptions that provide benefits, such as additional player slots, higher level caps, or monthly in-game currency allowances, but didn't give you the boot when you stopped paying. Then we come to season passes, providing access to additional content over a season, which could last anywhere from a few months to a year. For example, Civ 6's Frontier Pass unlocked new civilizations, leaders, and game modes, where Destiny 2's provided access to season-specific activities, missions, and equipment. Importantly, games with season passes are usually playable without the pass, but you just don't get that season's content. And speaking of playable without the pass, that brings us to games that are playable without the purchase. Free-to-play games. They have no upfront cost, and instead make money through
for a long time.
various ongoing methods. Their sordid history involves South Korean PC bongs, piracy, smartphones, ubiquitous internet, and a mistake by Apple. And you know, it's actually really a fascinating story I'd love to revisit in a future episode. Zoe, please mark that on the list. Thanks, bud. But what if you feel compelled to pay for your free game? Well, that's where the hybrid model of freemium comes in, where the game is free, but then either restricts important features or limits how far a player can progress before they need to pay. Note that this can be a soft cap, meaning at a certain point, the game progresses so slowly that it becomes almost unplayable, and in worst cases, preys on our impulse control for a quick dopamine hit. And both
fuck that
free-to-play
shit.
and freemium games make heavy uses of microtransactions, the tiny cousins of DLC. They're an ongoing revenue model that allows players to purchase in-game currencies, characters, cosmetics, and more. Typically, microtransactions are relatively inexpensive, but ever-present, allowing players to pay small amounts here and there for additional game content. Or to, spend a few $100 on a free game like Jeff and his League of Legends skins. Next, we get to the dreaded loot box, a form of microtransaction where instead of purchasing specific things you know you'll get, you receive random loot from a set of possible rewards. And while some of our past writers have hoped that the game industry would use these responsibly, time has most
Of course they're
definitely
not
shown
going to.
that
It's
most
capitalism.
implementations of loot boxes have been
That's why I'm against almost all this stuff, because they're never, ever, ever going to do it in a responsible way. As they've shown, it's impossible for them. They're too
on the
greedy.
predatory side. Though kinda opposite in philosophy to loot boxes is the Battle Pass, a system that rewards players for completing in-game tasks during a set amount of time, with a group of free stuff for everyone to
That sounds like a lot like Fall Guys, too.
earn, and a set of bonus loot for those who buy the pass. Unlike the random nature of loot boxes, battle passes usually expose exactly what the player will get and how they earn it, all while delivering
Yeah, just like
a
that,
dollop of
Fall
fun.
Guys.
Jeff first saw something like this in Dota 2
Or
in
like
2013.
Police Tower Defense 6 and the ones that from time to time when you can feed certain maps work towards getting insta-monkeys.
And they've since become a popular method of monetization for many multiplayer games. And finally, some games don't ask players directly for money at all. Instead, they generate revenue by showing players advertisements, kinda like YouTube. Or they allow players to view advertisements to earn in-game currency, or they allow players to pay real money to turn off advertisements altogether. I see you, YouTube Premium. Of course, there's no one best way for a game to make...
To do the watch a video to get rewards in Blue Star Defense 5.
Yeah, there's one game I have, Monster Truck Destruction, that does that too, where it plays ads and you can pay for it to turn them off and all that. I just ignore them.
Make money that will please all players. Genre, hardware, region, and audience all play a huge role. So, to match all the variables, we've seen teams implement a variety of monetization models when attempting to appeal to their game's core audience. And to illustrate, let's pull some names out of the old hat here and see how a smattering of popular games support themselves. Starting with, an easy one. Slay the Spire. That's a premium game. Next we have, Civ 6, which looks to be a premium game with 2 expansions and then a season pass covering 6 DLC drops. And, Fortnite. That has evolved to be free-to-play with microtransactions, a battle pass, and now a benefits-style subscription, a bit much for my taste. I spoke too soon! Destiny 2, a premium game with microtransactions, loot boxes, and expansions that converted to a free-to-play when it changed its publisher, added a season pass, kinda dropped loot boxes, and then switched to a different type of season pass with a battle pass add-on. I'm a little confused, but I hope it's working out for him. Anyway, we hope having all of this monetization madness in one place helps illustrate just how many options games have to support their creators, and how core that choice can be to a game's development. But now comes the hard part. Which of the bunch do you like best for developers, publishers, and gameplay?
Premium only!
Towards games that favor some styles of monetization over others?
How about that one?
These methods be...
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the video. It's just filler for all that. So what you gotta say about this video?
Okay, so what did you say? It went weird briefly and I missed that.
I only support premium content only. So the game needs to be made in full, and that's it. Nothing else. Anything else is just going to lead to greed, corruption, and terrible businesses practiced in the video game industry, which, as we've seen, has happened. That does not happen.
Oh, is it what?
And that does...
Unfortunately, one of the worst offenders.
What was the worst offender?
Nintendo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
Not just with Pokemon, but with many of their franchises.
But Harry says they're just fine, remember?
Unfortunately, it's the location they're in. Japan's culture is terrible.
Yeah.
And that country is, in many ways, in the early stages of falling apart.
So yeah, for me, when I make a video game, I'm gonna make it finished 100% when it comes out. There would be no DLC, no expansions, no microtransactions, none of that. And if possible, I would try to have no bugs or patches on it, because I would make sure that there's no bugs and patches to worry about. That's another thing too that I hate too with the online features now. Now they make it so where games are all bugged and patched and shit, and you have to get all those bugs and patches fixed before you can actually play them, whereas back in my day, they were just not there by default because they had no option, so they were forced to try and fix them as best they could. You should have that mindset from the very start. So, what about you?
The only time I'd ever have DLC, I'd have it A, free, and B, the programming, I guess, behind how in X and Y. You already had Hooper, Volcanion, and Zerora in the game, but you just couldn't access it yet. Or in Platinum, where you have Darkrai, Shaman, and Arceus. But, gee, I had Pokemon from Gens about 3 to 6, with Jirachi and Deoxys, Darkrai, Shaman, and Arceus, Keldeo, Meloetta, and Genesect, Hooper, Volcanion, and Zerora, where they're already in the game, and indeed Mega Evolutions for Latios and Latios, and the other ones, so a couple of the others as well, they were all in X and the programming in X and Y. Programming, that's what I was looking for, but it was not accessible until the DLC, or in the case of Mega Evolutions, Oris came out, But I would also say the DLC would be free.
And that is another problem too with DLC is that a lot of video game companies and publishers like Nintendo don't think about this very, very important thing that means a lot to me too. Video game preservation. Like hypothetically, say hypothetically, like sometime in the future, there's a way for me to like play Sword and Shield like all the Pokemon in there. Okay, now, like, this is like, I'm thinking about like 10, 20 years in the future, like when Switch is no longer being supported. What if I hypothetically wanted to get the DLC? Oh, wait, I can't get them anymore because the online shop for Switch is no longer available. So how am I going to get the shit? That's why you need to have this shit available permanently in some way. Like I said before, either they need to keep the shops up permanently, they need to pass it off to fans so they can do it, or they need to have another way to get it offline or some other way in the future. They need to think about game preservation too, but of course they don't care about that because they don't want to care about
generation. I think that one was I think that was actually Gen 3 to 5. No, that actually would be going all the way to 7 because it's really only started badly happening with this gen actually.
What?
With you can actually game preserve, which you couldn't do in the first 2 gens due to the battery in the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. I know this because I lost my Silver, all my progress on Silver about 4 or 5 years ago due to the battery after nearly a decade of use and about 3 years of neglect.
Yeah, they need to think about video game preservation, which is undermined by all these terrible monetization options, but they don't care about that because all they care about is money. Why would we care about preserving our games when we could just make you buy them again? Stupid. That's why I said before, this should all be straight up illegal. It needs to be strictly premium content. When you get the game, it's done. End discussion.
Content allowed. And all other content is illegal and unconstitutional.
Oh my god. Alright, so I think we've talked enough about this topic.
They'll probably knock about 80% of the games out right the frig away.
Yeah, it's not that hard. Just make...
That would be something that would be something you'd have to do internationally. You can't just do it in America. You've got to do... That would have to be worldwide. Europe, Japan...
Everywhere.
East Asia, Asia Pacific region, yeah, that would have to be a worldwide thing. Else you're going to get regions where like 80% of the games are just not brought in.
And that's why, like I said before, just make the game finished as is, and if you want to add stuff to it, just do a fucking sequel. It's not that hard to do. Alright. So I think we've done enough of this topic. So now what do you want to talk about next?
Next, the Rittenhouse Trial.
I had to clear my throat. So anyways, do you know much about this? Because I'm not... What'd you say?
I know he did a couple of videos on this.
Who?
Legal Eagle.
Oh yeah! And Hunter as well, and Mike. So anyways, for anybody that don't know about it, because I haven't been really paying too much attention on it either myself, back in I think it was August of 2020. This started with I can't remember his name, but he was a black guy who was being like tackled by the cops and all that for some domestic crap or whatever. He went into his car for something, and they shot him like 7 times. He survived, but he was like paralyzed and all that crap. So it led to, just like with George Floyd. What?
Was that? Hang on. He's still alive.
Last I heard, he survived, but he was like paralyzed from the waist down from the gunshots because he got shot like 7 times. But anyways,
No, it's not the one I thought of. I was thinking of Ahmed Arbery.
Oh yeah, which thankfully, hey, the people that killed him just got charged. Got guilty on them, so that's really good. But anyways, we're getting off topic. So just like with George Floyd, there was a massive protest and riots in Wisconsin. It was, and there was this 17-year-old by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse who went to one of these riots and protesters with a fucking rifle, which he wasn't allowed to have, and he went there. Wait, you said something?
Yep.
What?
I just said yep. Even though Harry will probably claim it's a corporate lie.
But he went there, and he was part of a militia to try and control, like, the peace, basically. And he said he was called by a car dealership to protect his dealership when the person who owned it said, no, we did not. Also, that would be very irresponsible to call a 17-year-old to help anyway. So anyways, the night this happened, he went around with his gun, waving around all that crap, and a couple people went after him, and he killed 2 of them. He shot no one before he eventually was caught by the cops. And he went to trial this last November, and he was acquitted on 5 charges. Like, 3 of them were for, like, homicide or something like that. And I think the other ones were, like, the illegal gun possession or something like that.
Basically, 2 of them they didn't even pursue because and so he wasn't even tried on it.
Which makes no sense, really, but we're going to get to that in a minute. So, what do you have to say about this so far?
It's a complicated one. It's legitimately a complicated one.
Yeah. So, well, first off, when it comes to, like, the self-defense, what do you think? Did he have self?
It's a hard one. This one is kind of hard. I think, because the thing is, there is the deadly force clause in the Wisconsin law, but it's fairly strict that you've got to show that it was your reasonably believe that
you mean
your life was in danger.
And
I'm
trying.
not 100% sure that was the case.
I know in one of the videos of the person he killed, he was fleeing and he shot him while being like cornered in a bunch of like cars. If you saw the footage,
one of those I might have.
I think Legal Eagle showed it too. And of course, one of the people he killed too hit him with a skateboard or something like that.
I think one hit him with a skateboard, which I think on that one, I think the proportionate response on that one could have been to whack him with the back end of your gun. Honestly.
Although he was on the ground, all that crap. So you're more in the line of like it's complicated.
Because it is. It's very complicated. It is complicated. Like there are charges that you could have absolutely gotten him on, and and as I've noted in the comments here, being attacked does not automatically mean you can use deadly force in self-defense. Your force must be proportionate and reasonable. You cannot use deadly force unless the actor reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm by himself or herself. By that same token, unarmed people can generate such a fear. Being unarmed doesn't necessarily mean no one can ever use deadly force against you.
Yeah, and that got me thinking too, because Mike from the Humus Report was strongly on the side of, no, he did not have self-defense. He was a murderer and all that crap. And then, of course, you had Hunter Avalon, who I watched both of them. He was on the opposite side, like, no, he did have self-defense. The people that went after him, that's their fault. That's what he's pretty much said. So we gotta see about both of these two in that regard. Like, they're like on the opposite extremes, basically.
I seem to be somewhere in between. Like,
yeah.
I lean self-defense, but I could also see the argument, of I'm blank.
Do you remember Foch and Destiny's debate, like where it happened like right afterwards?
Yeah, I saw that it was on.
Yeah, I remember that. And like Destiny was like fervently like defending Kyle in that regard, and like saying like if someone was in a situation where people are going after you, like trying to take your gun, all that crap, and you're fearing your life, wouldn't it make sense to defend yourself in that regard or something like that?
I can see the argument.
Yeah. For me, I could see it as indeed self-defense, but at the same time, he's not an innocent bystander. He wasn't a victim. He got himself in a situation that he should not have been in, along with the protester there too, because that was a curfew. Remember, no one should have been there.
Yeah. Like something he should not have been there.
No one should have been there, flat out. And of course, the people there, including the person that hit him with the skateboard, was actually part of the riots that were happening too. So he also, likewise, was not an innocent bystander. In the end of it, no one was innocent in this scenario, but everyone involved did something wrong. So yeah, you could say it's self-defense, but Kyle he is an innocent bystander, and he should have faced some sort of charges, especially with him taking those guns that he should not have had in the first place.
Illegal ownership of a firearm and breaking curfew.
Like those,
which would probably get him about a year in. Well, those two combined, I think, would get him about a year in jail.
Like that should be so obvious and reasonable. I don't know why they didn't bother going with that.
Neither do I.
And then of course, then you have the people that Mike. Well, no, not one Mike. The liberal media in some regards, going nuts over this to a pretty weird extent, as Hunter has covered. Oh, this is all just white supremacy and all that crap, and Kyle's a white supremacist and a racist. Oh, and there was a lie that he killed everyone he killed was black. No, they were all white. So and also, I don't know if I would say he's a white nationalist or supremacist or racist. He definitely is way too pro-cop, but of course, he grew up in that environment, so I guess I'm not too surprised. But just being pro-cop does not make you a racist, though. Don't go that too far, as Hunter's point out.
Same with, I think it's Proud Boys, flashing, I'm going to be very specific with my wording here, flashing a symbol that, while not a white power symbol on its own, has been co-opted by the white power movement as a white power sign.
Yeah.
So it's not a white power sign in and of itself.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who use it are of the white power type.
Yeah, and that's a very good explanation about the white OK sign, which a lot of liberals and leftists do not explain very well. They just say the symbol itself is just racist, flat out. End of discussion. They sound really silly in that regard. And then and then Mike also had a complete meltdown. They weren't the judge said that you couldn't call the people Kyle killed victims, only rioters and looters and all that crap. And as Legal Eagle and Hunter point out, you're not supposed to call anyone any of that, because that's implying guilt to one party or other. You're supposed to be impartial in that regard. Yeah. So, Mike, I'm sorry, but you're just wrong in that. You're being too biased towards Kyle in that regard, because you think he's automatically in the wrong, and therefore there's no point to even bother doing this trial in the first place. You're already convinced he did something wrong, flat out.
I mean, he did, but he's not killing people, not murdering people.
Yeah.
It's the other stuff that he did that he did wrong. That's just breaking curfew and wielding a gun while underage.
Well, the people it's I would say maybe more equal blame. They shouldn't have been there. They shouldn't have attacked him. And I'm sure if they didn't go after him, he probably wouldn't have shot them, because he was acting in self-defense. But in the end,
but let's be honest here, he was also kind of looking for someone to attack him so he could shoot them.
Yeah, and like we said, that's why he's not as I said, he's not innocent in all this. He's also guilty of this. Everyone's basically at fault for what happened, basically. Yep. Now, of course, and of course, this is something Hunter won't really admit either. We gotta be honest. It's pretty obvious. Don't deny it. If the races were reversed and Kyle was black and did all this crap, he never would have gotten off of it. Don't deny it. You know he would.
Well, he would not have made it. He wouldn't have made it to the he would have not have made it to the
cops. That's
he would have made it to the cop house. They would have just shot. They would have just injected they would have unloaded an entire magazine of bullets into him.
Yeah, they would have killed him probably on the spot instead of just pepper spraying him like they did. Just don't deny that either. Seems like a lot of people are just way too on one side of this, when this thing is completely nuanced. There's one of the most nuanced things probably in a while. In the end, both sides are just wrong in the end of it.
Yeah.
You could say, yeah, it was self-defense, but at the same time, he was being way too gung-ho about it. He should not have been there, along with the people that he killed. No one was supposed to be there. It's just like everyone was in the wrong. And I would like it if people acknowledge that, like, both sides are wrong, but unfortunately, a lot of people just can't do it. Especially more obvious to me on the left more, which is pretty annoying. Alright, so now, if you're done talking about that, do you want to move on to the next topic?
I'm going to be privileged.
I
have no idea what this is about.
I know what this is about because I've watched before. So I think it was in the last episode we talked about this in an off-topic thing, and I mentioned I was going to go find this video. This is a channel who unfortunately is no longer active from a year ago, but it's a channel called Counter Arguments, and they did like a lot of really good like counter arguments to a whole bunch of other stuff. And one of the things is they talked in this video was about privilege, more particularly white privilege, and it's so good. It might be like one of the best videos about privilege ever because it talks about privilege, even brings up white privilege, and points out that yes, indeed, white privilege does exist, but the problems is not that that doesn't exist, is that people don't argue it in a good way and makes them look stupid and silly, like we pointed out before. So yeah, I hope you're ready for this good video. This is awesome.
Privilege, as it relates to a person's identity, is one of the most difficult subjects to discuss productively. Why? What is the problem with this particular debate? Well, perhaps it's this. Ordinarily, a healthy debate about any subject would stay focused on the subject matter itself, on the merits of the arguments themselves, and would never, ever become personal. However, a discussion about privilege will inevitably become personal because the personal background of those having the discussion is the subject matter. No wonder, then, it's such a precarious concept to entertain. This, in spite of the fact that it's actually a simple theory. The definition of privilege is a right or immunity granted as a peculiar benefit, advantage, or favor. According to the theory of privilege, privileges are not earned, but inherited through the good fortune of an individual's birth. Some people inherit many privileges, and other people inherit few privileges. It's a theory, and a fascinating one at least. After all, everyone is born into a different environment, a series of circumstances that they are not responsible for. There's a common experiment that's conducted to illustrate this. A diverse group of individuals are lined up side by side and are then given cues such as, if you get time off for your religious holidays, take one step forward. If you've ever been diagnosed with a physical disability or a mental illness, take one step back, and the results are unsurprising. Some individuals are near the front of the room, and others are near the rear. So the central claim of this theory is not a controversial one. Some people are less fortunate than others through no fault of their own. And this establishes the bare bones criteria for a privilege, a characteristic or circumstance which A, presents advantages that are B, not earned, and C, are invisible to those who have them, which is a figurative way of saying that a person who has had a particular advantage their entire life does not know what life is like without that advantage.
Which conservatives don't understand.
Simple enough. Those circumstances, those aspects of a person's life, are what's labeled privileges. These include, but cannot possibly be limited to, being white, being male, being straight or heterosexual, being able-bodied, wealthy or upper class, being educated, being tall, an American citizen, mentally healthy, stereotypically beautiful, having two married parents, being a Christian, young, having been well-raised as a child, speaking English, being skinny or thin, cisgender, and living in a country or any other setting in which there is no war. All of these
all of them might have both privileges and negatives.
circumstances and characteristics, so the argument goes,
What'd you say?
Particularly if you're male.
are privileges. Each
one.
Yeah, well, he actually will talk about it later on.
one allegedly gives an individual a better likelihood that they will realize their full potential and make the most of their life. One thing that you might have noticed about these characteristics is that they don't have very much in common with one another. Race, class, attractiveness, parental guidance, height. These are all remarkably different ways of assessing a person's privilege or lack thereof. So let's start simple and analyze an obvious example. Wealth privilege. Money presents you with more options and opportunities in life. The more of it that you have, money also sustains a high quality of life. Good schools, healthy food, safe communities, and the ability to travel. So if somebody was born into a wealthy family, that could safely be described as a privilege. Another example here that easily fits the standards might be the privilege of having an intact family, having two parents who are married to one another. According to numerous studies, children whose parents have gotten divorced are statistically less likely to be physically or emotionally healthy, more likely to drop out of high school, work lower-paying jobs, become addicted to drugs and alcohol, not to mention twice as likely to attempt suicide, and 300% more likely to require psychological help. Empirically, having an intact family is a privilege. The same could be said of being able to use your entire body, the privilege of being mentally healthy, the privilege of being well-raised, and the privilege of living in a state of peace, far removed from a war zone or any other military conflict. All of these circumstances satisfy the criteria. They grant advantages which are unearned, and they are, according to the theory, invisible, which, again, is just a figurative way of saying that if you've always been wealthy, you don't know what it's like to be poor. If you're able-bodied, you don't know what it's like being unable to use your hands or your legs. If your family is intact, you don't know how it feels to live in a broken home.
You get an idea of what it's like if you've broken your leg, for instance. Or if you're like me, I actually do have an idea of what it's like to be, I have an idea, that's the critical bit, idea of what it's like to be physically disabled, because I've had to be around in a wheelchair when one of the times I busted my foot, and I've had to endure 5-6 weeks without the use of my writing hand when I smacked my elbow.
Or when I had to help my mom around the house for several months after having knee replacement.
But if you do lack any of these privileges, you do know what it's like. All in all, the theory itself seems to make a fair observation. And so far, the examples that we've checked off fit very well into the framework of the theory. But if we take a look at some of the others here, we might not find that to be the case. One such characteristic would be tall privilege. A characteristic which is naturally unearned, but the benefits that...
It's an absolute double-edged sword. I'd say probably the ideal would probably be about 5'11", 5'10" to 6, about 6'3". I'm 6'6", and it's definitely a double-edged sword for me, being at 6'6".
But on the other hand, women on average like taller men, so you got that privilege, unlike me.
Being tall,
but I'm also pretty regularly having to duck under doorways.
And back pain probably too.
Yeah.
And of course, such a privilege when I have to... And of course, it's such a privilege being annoyed and pestered by my mother to get stuff from tall places all the time.
Being tall is an advantage when grabbing something hard to reach. It is not an advantage when flying coach. There's also something to be said about height as it relates to dating, and by extension, natural selection. Studies have shown that a majority of heterosexual women prefer a man who is taller than they are. And heterosexual men as well generally prefer a woman who is shorter than they are.
I'm the opposite.
That makes being tall a privilege for men, but not so much a privilege for women in the context of dating. What difference does it make, one might ask, if a privilege is only a privilege conditionally? So what? Well, to answer that, it allows us to question part of this theory, that a privilege renders advantages. If a tall person, for example, is fortunate to be tall under certain conditions and unfortunate to be tall under other conditions...
And of course, if you didn't see the video, there was a video that, if you're watching it, showed someone in a double-decker bus, and he's so tall that he has to bend his head to the side to avoid to be able to fit underneath the bus's roof.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh my god, that sucks.
Describing that characteristic simply as a privilege would seem to be biased. It would only acknowledge the advantages, and it would ignore the disadvantages. A great example of this...
It's a disadvantage with my height, because most of my height's in my body, it means that I can't fit into a lot of cars.
Yeah,
Them.
like the video showed, someone couldn't fit in the bus.
Still gonna bring it down as low as possible, and even then, some of those times I can't.
This would be American privilege. There are many aspects of American life which are better by comparison to life in other countries. However, there are other aspects of American life which are worse by comparison. But what really makes this trait a giant mess is that it is extremely debatable which ones are which. For example, many would argue that the right to bear arms is a positive aspect of American life, while others would argue that it is in fact a negative aspect. And this is just one example, one of many, many, many others. There are uncontroversial benefits that come with being an American, but because the theory of privilege is only concerned with advantages, it might not be the best way to understand a trait in which there are advantages and disadvantages. It might also call into question the second standard, that a privilege is unearned. That's not always the case with something like citizenship. Most Americans were born in the United States. Their citizenship was not earned. Some Americans, however, immigrated from another country. Their citizenship was earned. Are they, according to the theory, privileged to be an American? A similar question could be asked regarding thin people. Some people naturally stay thin due to their genetic makeup, God bless them, but other people can only stay thin if they diet and exercise. Those people work hard to maintain a thin body, in which case, according to the theory, they are not necessarily privileged to be thin. Even the privilege of having an education could be questioned on these grounds. Having access to an education is a privilege. But completing an education is a personal achievement, or at least it should be, as well as the grades that a student makes. So again, it seems like some of this is conditional. Not all of these characteristics are inherent all of the time. Some of them can be achieved. Body size, grade point average, citizenship, spoken language, religion, physical attractiveness to an extent, and even wealth. These things either can or must be obtained by someone who doesn't already have them. At this point, we could question the third standard as well, the invisibility of privilege. The notion of privilege being invisible makes sense, but only if you've had such a privilege for your entire life. Suppose you haven't. Suppose somebody was not always thin, or educated, or beautiful. Suppose somebody escapes a war-torn country and flees to another country that's in a state of peace. It's probably not fair to assume that the benefits of peace are invisible to that person because they have personally experienced life without those benefits. Each characteristic here entails different advantages under specific conditions to a varying degree of probability. Some of them render disadvantages, some of them can be earned, and the benefits entailed are not invisible to everyone who has them. Not to mention the fact that you can't tell most of this stuff about a person just by looking at them. Some, however, you can tell just by looking at them, and up until now, you've probably been waiting for the elephant or elephants in the room to be acknowledged. By far, the two most contested and publicized privileges of them all, male privilege and white privilege.
Here we go!
These two, let's call them genres of privilege, are notoriously difficult to discuss productively, with white privilege perhaps being the slipperiest of them all.
Let me repeat this, and I'll do it slowly.
All right.
So even you can understand.
All right.
If you work hard, if you get educated, if you're an honest person, you can make it in America.
If you live in a neighborhood where poverty is endemic,
Yeah.
it's harder to work hard.
It's harder.
There you go, Jon
It
Stewart!
was harder for me than it was for the white guy in Garden City. It's all relative. Yes, it's harder if you're a ghetto kid. Yes, but can you do it? Yes.
Yes, you can. You can also win the 100-yard dash on one leg, but it's harder.
One reason for this, as was mentioned earlier, is that it's hard to have any conversation that becomes personal. But it also doesn't help that when people try to explain white privilege, they usually do so in a very fuzzy and uninformative way.
Does white privilege exist?
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely.
And where's the proof of that?
All around.
Give me some hints as to my white privilege.
You know, it's about role and it's about access, and what you can do is extend that privilege so that you can dismantle it, right? So you can create opportunity for people, you can amplify issues in ways that other people can, and you can use your resources to create.
D-Ray, you're not making any sense.
It's basically
Definitely not.
to anything that everybody else is excluded from because of your skin color.
The truth is that white privilege doesn't act according to quantifiable segments. It's about the degree to which we are willing as a society to grapple with the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality upon which it's based.
White people were raised to think of ourselves as good people.
We are good people.
And there is a moral thorn if you hear that you have had some things in your life that you didn't deserve, you didn't earn, but they came to you. So we're quite fragile on the subject, and whites are often defensive.
So where is the best place to begin in trying to understand this? When we were looking at these other types of privileges, you probably noticed the theme. It's all a matter of averages. Being healthy, being wealthy, being educated and good-looking, having an intact family, etc. All of these things render a higher likelihood of a fulfilling life. They don't guarantee it, they simply make the odds better. So, can we apply that premise to being white? Does being born white make a good life more likely? Let's be empirical about this and find out. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, from 2010 to 2014, white Americans represented the lowest percentage of students in high-poverty public schools. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the percentage of black people who are unemployed is higher than the percentage of white people, regardless of the level of education. According to Pew Research Center, whites are more likely to be born into an intact family, graduate high school, have a degree, own a house, live above the poverty line, and earn a higher household income, all relative to blacks, at least in the United States. What does all of this mean? It means that we have an abstract argument. A white newborn baby is, on average, more likely to be born to two married parents who are educated, own a house, and are not in poverty. In short, a white newborn baby is more likely to be born into a good environment. And being born into a good environment simply means that you are more likely to achieve a fulfilling life. This observation fits the framework of the theory. Being born into certain circumstances makes certain outcomes statistically more likely. The same holds true for male privilege, albeit being a man relative to a woman is notably grayer. On average, men are physically larger and stronger, earn a higher salary, are more likely to be a billionaire, a CEO, a politician, a business owner, and are less likely to be the victim of sexual assault relative to women. Men are also more likely to be killed at work or in war, lose custody of their children, wind up homeless, live a shorter life, and be a victim of aggravated assault relative to women, just to name very few examples. So the privilege of being a male American is a lot more conditional than the privilege of being a white American, but the general notion that being born a certain way makes certain outcomes more likely still appears to be a fair observation.
Yeah, white privilege does exist. How about that, conservatives? Empirically proven to you right to your face. Now, to the problem, though, which unfortunately a lot of liberals and progressives do not do a good job explaining.
So maybe the problem with this theory isn't the theory itself, but rather the way in which it is often applied. Privilege is often not approached abstractly, but rather concretely. The notion that success is more likely with privilege is bastardized into the assumption that success requires privilege. Now, what could possibly go wrong when that assumption is made? Suppose you have a conversation with a successful man without knowing his skin color. You might assume that the person you're talking to is white because white people are more likely to be successful relative to black people, and that would be an assumption. As with any assumption, it might be wrong.
I've chosen to cross different parts of the media world, done the work so that I'm qualified to be in each one. I never considered my color the issue. I considered my qualifications the issue.
Well, David, that's a whole other long conversation about white privilege and things that you have the privilege of doing that people of color don't have the privilege of.
How do I have the privilege of white privilege?
David, by virtue of being a white male, you have white privilege. It's a whole long conversation. I don't have time to get into.
Reva, I hate to break it to you, but you should have been better prepped. I'm black.
Okay, then I
see, you went to white privilege. This is the falsehood in this. You went immediately with an assumption. That's actually insulting.
It is, and I apologize because my people gave you wrong information.
Who gives you the wrong information? That I'm white to come on my radio show. Think about that for a minute.
What did she say her team? What was the bad information?
They gave her the wrong information, so
what does that mean?
Well, that's my question. How do you give someone the wrong information about my skin color?
During this interview, Areva Martin used the abstract theory of privilege as the basis for a concrete assumption about David Webb. Martin's argument was that Webb could not have possibly accomplished all of the things that he had accomplished if he was black. Well, we know that's not true because David Webb is black. So what was wrong with Martin's argument? Simply put, her argument took the theory of privilege out of the abstract and applied it improperly by making an assumption about an individual. The theory of privilege states that certain characteristics make certain outcomes more probable. It does not state that certain outcomes are guaranteed, thus this theory should not be used to make concrete predictions. Unfortunately, that's often how it is used.
You've never experienced that happening to a higher Neither have I. You're a white male. You're a white man.
Imagine there was a study which found that red cars are more likely to end up in a traffic accident than blue cars. Based on such a study, you could argue, abstractly, that red cars are dangerous because they're more likely to end up in an accident relative to another car color. That would be fair. It would not be fair to assume that every single red car will eventually cause a crash, nor would it be fair to assume that blue cars will never crash. There are too many other variables that contribute to car accidents, and they all need to be taken into consideration. The same principle applies to privilege. Being white and/or male does not guarantee a privileged life because it is possible for a white man to be gay, poor, ugly, disabled, uneducated, medicated, a mental disorder, or the product of a broken home. It's also possible for, say, a black woman to be straight, rich, beautiful, able-bodied, educated, mentally healthy, and a member of an intact family. Such a black woman would arguably be more privileged than such a white man. Even if you knew everything about another person, you'd likely find that they were a hodgepodge of fortunate and unfortunate character traits.
Yep.
Someone who is intelligent, but ugly. Physically
Sounds like
healthy,
me.
but mentally unhealthy. Male, but short. In short, everybody has a relative amount of privilege.
What'd you say?
Or me, excessively tall.
Yeah. So let's keep watching though.
A very plain point, very well made by Tiffany Jana, founder and CEO of TMI Consulting.
The more I thought about what other people thought of me and what other people had done to me, the less I was able to believe in my full potential. And that's one of the problems with privilege. I was so fixated on the privilege that I didn't have that I missed much of the privilege that I do have. I missed the fact that being an army brat and having international experience and being multilingual and having a great education and a mom with a PhD and a dad with an MD all gave me plenty of opportunities for success. And that's one of the traps our society lays for us. We think of privilege as something that you either have or you don't have. It's like a switch, either it's on or it's off. And if we allow ourselves to focus on the privileges that we don't have, then it's really easy for us to become blind to the ones we do have.
Once this theory has been driven all the way to its destination, we find ourselves right around where we started, with the simple fact that everyone is born into a different environment, a series of circumstances that they are not responsible for. This is, and will probably always be true, and the theory of privilege is simply a means to observe that. The best place to keep this theory appears to be in the abstract, a matter of relative probability and a means to provoke sympathy and thought, to recognize your disadvantages while at the same time making use of your advantages.
Yep, that was good. So what do you have to say about it?
It's complicated, always has been. There's some that got, but even then, with height, it would almost be like between a range, where then it becomes a bit more of a big span. Like, for example, if you're as tall as men, that can be a bit of a hard one.
But yeah, like, the stats show that white privilege does exist. The problem is that liberals don't do a good job of explaining it, as the video showed. But as you see all the privileges here, we can see which one we have privileges and disadvantages in. I mean, we're both white, we're both men, we're both straight, we're both able-bodied in terms of we're able to use our body parts, I guess, if that's what you mean by. Wealthy, we're...
Because I've got educated, what it's called. And we're both English speaking and young and I'm thin. And we're cisgender living in peace. With actually my immediate family. And mentally healthy-ish. I've got anxiety. I've got anxiety and stress issues that come up from time to time, but...
So let's see. I don't think either of us are wealthy, though.
Well, I was, until I spent $18,000 getting a new car.
Educated.
That's only because I save, but that's only because I save like hell.
Same here. And we're
part-time job. So.
And of course, well, it depends on what your definition of educated is. Since I'm just high school.
Bachelor's degree.
And tall. I am tall by American standards, but you're way taller than me. But as you said, it's not always a privilege either. It depends. Yep. American, that's a privilege only I have. Mentally healthy, I don't know. Beautiful, I am definitely not. I don't know about you. Intact family, yes. No, we're not. We're not Christian. We are young, well raised. What is that necessarily supposed to mean? Possibly, maybe not. Yes, we both are English. We speak English. You're Finn. I'm not. We're both cis, and I guess you could say we live in peace where we're at. So as you can see, everybody, we have privileges, but we also have disadvantages. And some of our cases, especially our co-host, he has one privilege that's also a disadvantage at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we gotta say about that video. Wasn't it awesome or what? Like I told you.
It was. It was. It was good.
Damn it, Counter Arguments, could you please come back? It's been over a year. You make awesome stuff like this. Like, come on. Like you're like the liberal that can explain things in a way that makes conservatives even understand, or make liberal arguments that are very easy to understand like this. You expertly showed that white privilege does exist, and said it in a smart way that no one who's rational or reasonable can refute. And you made fun of idiots too. So yeah, that was an awesome video. So now, what do you want to watch next?
Let's do Biden answering if he's running in 2024.
Okay. So, of course, we got the 2022 elections come up still before 2024. Now, we mentioned this before. We're thinking about would Biden actually run again or not, because he's old, senile, maybe dead before he gets to 2024, and he's unpopular as hell, so maybe the pressure would be like, you gotta drop out and all that crap. You can't actually run again for a second term. Now, Biden said before, he said both things. He said before that I'm not gonna run for a second term. This is just a one term to stop Trump, and then I'll let someone else take over. And then he said another time that, no, I actually do plan on running again in the future, something like that. Well, just recently, as Kyle covered only a week ago, Biden gave his answer. And of course, it's muted for some reason.
Joe Biden came out and answered a question that's been on everybody's mind. and that is whether or not he's going to run in the 2024 election. So let's go ahead and throw up this graphic here and take a look. Biden and aides tell allies he is running in 2024 amid growing Democratic fears. If Biden doesn't run, some fear an open and potentially bruising primary campaign with no clear frontrunner. Harris, seen at the start of the administration as a potential heir apparent, has stumbled in the eyes of many Democrats, opening the door to conversations in the party about the prospect of others leading the ticket if Biden steps aside. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is seen by some Democrats as another potential candidate from inside the administration. Former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe spoke during his gubernatorial campaign about possibly running in 2024 if Biden steps aside, according to multiple people familiar with the conversations. But his defeat in this month's election cast that plan into doubt. You don't say. The names some liberals have floated as possible candidates if Biden steps down includes Senator Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, and Jeff Merkley of Oregon. Others have pointed to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
What?
I don't know, Elizabeth Warren, but the others were like, who?
Sherrod Brown, I think, is the progressive ran Ohio, who's like Bernie somewhat.
Right.
Cause I keep thinking of the I think it was Chantel Brown, the woman who beat Nina Turner. That's why I keep thinking of too. When I keep hearing that name.
Who is seen as the future of the liberal movement. In 2025, she would barely meet the constitutional requirement that presidents be at least 35 years old.
Now, of course, of these people, if Biden did not run, Kamala, Buttigieg, Warren, Sherrod Brown, Merkley, and AOC, of these 6 people, who do you think would be the best one?
I want to say AOC.
I want to as well, but we'll get to them very soon. We'll get to the problems with it later.
So, there is quite a bit to say about this story, and it is namely, yet again, how screwed the Democrats are. So Biden says he's running. Listen, I don't want to be too harsh here, but the fact of the matter is, he is a zombie, and he does have one foot in the grave. I'm not trying to say that as a knock on dude, because we're all going to be...
What?
And it's the U.S. president.
Get that age at some point, but you don't look so good, fam. You don't look so good. So it's possible, even if he has the will to run in 2024, it might not really come to fruition. I mean, guys, he actually got lucky, politically speaking, in the sense that there was the pandemic when he ran last time, because he literally did get to campaign from his basement. And that was the best possible outcome for him, because it is...
And let's be honest, as we keep pointing out before, if it wasn't for COVID, he probably would have lost to Trump. The only reason he won was because of COVID. I know a lot of liberals want to deny it at all costs. That no, Trump was so bad, he was going to lose no matter what. Wrong again.
It's brutal.
Honestly, if Kamala tries to run in 2024 and Trump or DeSantis run, she's going to lose all 50 states.
Much as you have to do when you're campaigning and go give rallies and speeches and talk to this person and do an interview with that person. I mean, it's grueling. And he's going to be, what, in his 80s at the time? I mean, God, you guys know how much I love Bernie Sanders, but even the idea of Bernie Sanders running a third time, I'm like, really?
Yeah, Kyle, really. Bernie has the best shot of everyone, which is why I think until he either dies or he wins, he should run every single election. And guess what? He may be older than Biden, but he is mentally sharp and he's healthy, unlike him. So I don't want to hear no crap about, Bernie's too old. I don't want to fucking hear it. So yeah, what do you think about that? Should Bernie keep running until he dies or wins?
Yes.
Because
wins or both.
Because it's not just about we agree with him. He also is well known compared to like everyone else. Like AOC, she's not well known like Bernie. That's one thing I'm worried about. If she did get the nomination, she might lose because a lot of people just don't know her. Whereas Bernie, he has a lot more. People know him more in comparison, and he's the most popular senator in the country, whereas AOC is very unpopular in the places where she needs to win.
Really? It seems like it's such an overwhelming prospect. By the way, he floated the idea of running in 2016, and even in 2016, the talk was maybe he'll only make a one-term pledge if he runs in 2016 and wins. So we were talking about a one-term pledge in 2016. Now we're talking all the way in 2024, he's going to run again? and this time he'll actually have to campaign and he can't do it from his basement? I don't know. And the other thing is, it would weaken him.
Honestly, I think if he did run in 2016 and got the nomination, I think he would have beaten Trump. What do you think?
In 20... Yeah, I think so. I think if he'd run in 2016 for a term, yes, he would have won. I reckon he would have...
Like, the reason...
Here's the thing. Biden and Obama, I reckon, would have won by, I'd say, by about the margin that Hillary lost.
Yeah, I think they would have won. It was just like Hillary was so bad, like Trump needed Hillary to win, basically. If it was any other Democrat, I think he would have lost. Likewise for Hillary, I think if it was anyone but Trump, I think she would have won. It just needed the perfect match for Trump to win.
Further, politically, to admit I'm not going to run in 2024. That would weaken him further politically in terms of all the negotiations going on behind the scenes and all the legislation that they're attempting to pass. So, and in the article,
I mean, you could have kept it secret for like up to a year at least, like undecided.
Also go on to point out that they spoke to, I don't know, like 18 or 24 Democratic insiders, and literally every single one did not take the idea of Joe Biden running a second time as a real possibility. They all thought there's no way that's going to happen. But putting Biden aside for a second, here's the saddest thing. He may actually be the best bet. Again, not policy-wise, I'm saying politically, because, again, let's go through the list here. They float Kamala. Her approval rating is 28%.
Biden in every single state.
Was just 38%, and a new poll came out and dropped to 36%. So Kamala is even lower than Joe. Mayor Pete, 37%.
Nobody likes you idiots. Well. How about that?
Now remember, these guys are out of the spotlight. For those of you who don't understand politics, usually when you're out of the spotlight, your approval rating isn't freakishly low. But they're out of the spotlight and they have a low approval rating. That's unbelievable. Now, they reference Warren. Warren just proved in the last campaign that she doesn't know her ass from her elbow when it comes to a national political campaign. Because she started out by being Bernie Sanders-esque, and then eventually she decided, what if I just go all in on wokeness? And she tanked in the polls and became a joke. So, do I trust that she has learned her lessons and she will adjust accordingly?
Sadly.
No, I don't. Because all these Democrats, even the ones who had potential and had promise, they got all these idiot staffers whispering in their ear that you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do this and you have to do that. And long story short, these people telling them what to do, they have no idea what they're talking about. None whatsoever. And I don't trust them to stick to whatever their own instincts are, that even that their own instincts are necessarily correct. So Elizabeth Warren is, all the way down. Then, of course, they float Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You want to know what her approval rating is? 32%. 32. So she's in between Kamala and Mayor Pete. Gotta keep it real, man. Messaging-wise, she's had a tremendous number of mistakes.
Why that would be.
Yep.
Because half the left thinks she's a careerist grifter. So already she's lost that entire half, and the entire right wing think that she's some evil communist who's going to overthrow the West and install a nationalist Marxist caliphate or some bullshit like that.
And the rest of us sane liberals are disappointed in her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And on that one, sorry AOC, you have no one to blame for yourself. You should have stand up and fought like you should have.
And she ain't hit. I don't even think she can win.
Biden did. It's just enough Republicans flipped onto pro to cancel out the squad voting against.
New York Senate race against Chuck Schumer. Never mind a presidential election. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it would happen. So honestly, I think she's out. And then I'll save the funniest one for last. But they bring up like Jeff Merkley. Jeff Merkley has the charisma of a bowl of oatmeal. Now, of those listed, Sherrod Brown is the least bad, but he also has no national profile. 77% of the country doesn't know who Sherrod Brown is. He's an Ohio Democratic senator. Now, to be fair to him, he's got great labor politics. He's against Medicare for All, though, which I absolutely despise. I hate that with a burning passion. He is further left than a lot of other Democrats in the Senate. And what's interesting is he won his election in a year where Democrats didn't necessarily do so well. And right next door in Indiana, there was this Democrat, I believe his name was Joe Donnelly, Democratic senator from Indiana named Joe Donnelly. And he was basically pretending like he was Reagan in the Democratic Party. He lost his election that same election year, 2018, Sherrod Brown won his election right next door against a Republican by 7 points. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make about Sherrod Brown is that despite all of his flaws and his downsides, he's strong in the areas one needs to be strong in order to win a presidential race. Now, getting through the primary is a separate question. And again, he's more charismatic than Jeff Merkley, but I mean, his charisma is only slightly better than a bowl of oatmeal. Maybe he's like a bowl of porridge. What the fuck even is porridge? I don't even know what porridge is. I'm not sure I've ever had porridge in my life. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You get the point. So he's the least bad of all the options, but still, nobody...
I don't know. In terms of policies, AOC would probably be the best, since at least she supports Medicare for all in that regard. The only problem with her is she's just way too woke a lot of times, and she's a coward and won't stand up for herself. That's the big problem.
He knows who the hell he is. And then finally, my favorite part of that passage that we just read there is they bring up Terry McAuliffe. Homeboy just ran for governor in a D+10 state and lost. And you're going to float this guy as the future of the Democratic Party?
Yes. How about that, Kyle?
Because we
do you have...
states and let America become a fascist dictatorship where we'll all be thrown in concentration camps and massacred.
And then we can run anti-Trump stuff all the time and make money as we complain and do nothing. Cha-ching!
This is like Nat IQ shit. He just lost in a D+10 state, and you're like, well, maybe Terry. They're like, oh, the fact that he lost throws it into doubt. You don't say. Not only would I say it throws it into doubt, I'd say, dunzo, strike one, you're out. Ain't no 2 and 3, son. You can't lose in a D+10 state and then say, maybe I'll run for president next time. And by the way, that guy as well, I have something about him. I mean, now he's not even like Jeff Merkley charisma of a bowl of oatmeal. He has like negative charisma. Even if you agree with some of the things he says, you listen to him and you're like, I'd like to punch that guy in the face. You don't know why, but that's the feeling that you get coming over you. So, and there's nobody, dog. There's nobody. Listen, the Democrats' best hope.
Bernie!
Zombie Joe Biden. The ones I listed, either Sherrod Brown, which is still a long shot, or zombie Joe Biden would have the best chances electorally in terms of victory. This is all apart from a conversation about policy substance, where I think virtually all these people fall short in a variety of different ways. So, but if it's not Joe Biden, and it's not Sherrod Brown, then you just almost have to cross your fingers and hope that there's a politician that emerges from the ether and captures the nation's imagination.
Or how about this, Kyle? Feel the burn.
Warnock from Georgia. He was a preacher. He said a lot of base things when he was a preacher. And, him or John Ossoff, for example.
Ossoff's a piece of shit.
I don't know how good they are, but I know they're not. Ooh, my own crush fell and hit me. Isn't that funny? This thing has been sliding all over the place.
Ossoff better not be. He's awful.
So Warnock and Ossoff, like, they are from Georgia, which is traditionally a red state, and they're not acting like Manchin and Sinema, which leads me to believe, okay.
The only reason they won, though, is more because Trump told his supporters not to go out to vote because it's rigged, remember, as we covered.
We're somewhere here, because they easily...
Could have still won. I don't remember which one it was. Was that the other guy? It was the preacher guy.
Warnock won by more. Ossoff barely won. It was really close.
Ossoff would have lost, but I still think that Warnock would have gotten over the line.
So he could have done the whole, like, I'm above the fray, I'm a moderate Democrat. And they didn't do that. And again, Warnock said a bunch of base things when he was a preacher. So you almost hope that, like, maybe Raphael Warnock comes out of nowhere. Maybe we get lucky in the sense that he has, like, Bernie Sanders-type politics, and then he can capture the imagination of the Democratic base and win an election. But outside of some outsider coming out of nowhere, having good politics and winning...
Bernie, Kyle.
They're screwed, son. They're screwed. I'm going to get to another story at a different time on how... You would think, given this set of facts, that they'd be like, oh my god, Trump is the favorite to be the next president of the U.S.
They don't care, though.
But not only are they not saying that, a lot of these idiots are rooting for Trump to be the nominee on the right. This is Pied Piper strategy 2.0. You remember that? With Hillary Clinton, famously, there were emails internally with Hillary Clinton and her staffers, and they were like, we're going to do the Pied Piper strategy. We're going to bolster Donald Trump in the primary because we know we'll beat him in the general. How'd that go, you dingbats? It went terribly, and the same thing will happen right now. The same thing will happen. They underestimate him, and they underestimate him, and they underestimate him, and then, when push comes to shove, he ended up winning. And that might happen again. So, I mean, it is bleak, dog. But listen, Joe Biden, from the horse's mouth, he says, I'm running in 2024.
Although I
whether
wouldn't...
or not reality will align with that is a totally different question.
We can't say for sure he's going to run or not because we don't know. So we got to say about that.
I think they're going to... The Democrats are basically going to die as a political party if they don't get their shit together and find an outsider who can actually do something, like Bernie.
But they don't like Bernie, remember? He's just an old white man. Remember? Even though they got dementia Joe.
Old white men can be very, very useful when it comes to things.
But that's something a lot of the wokes don't want to admit, ever.
Yeah,
dumbass.
Literally everybody but other wokes hate the woke.
But yeah, of the people that Kyle suggested, AOC would probably be the best, but unfortunately because of her own fuck-up, she probably would blow her chances to win, sadly. But yeah, that's why we want Bernie to win. All the policies, he's well-known, and he's not hated like AOC, for crying out loud. So yeah, I think we get on. Now we're going to go to our last topic, which is the video that you brought up. So since you brought it up, what is this about?
Basically, it's about a guy calling from Nebraska to chat about hypocrisy of gun nuts on YouTube. Basically around Rittenhouse and guns and things like that. It's not very long, but very interesting.
How long is it?
About 4 minutes.
I think YouTube's trying to play the ads, even though I have ad blocker off. Because it said like 35 minutes, and then it went down to like 2 minutes. Like, what? Alright, finally got it up.
I wanted to kind of touch on something that I thought was pretty interesting, especially with the Rittenhouse trial and everything. I've spent a decent amount of time in right-wing, not so much right-wing, but gun YouTube, which is dominated by the right-wing, obviously. And something that's kind of interesting about this is that they praise people like the McCloskeys, and they praise people like Rittenhouse, which anybody who is a gun owner talks about being safe, being smart with it, being legal.
Ironically, he was neither.
The 4 basic rules of firearm safety, that type of thing. And something that they don't ever talk about with these people, like McCloskey and Rittenhouse, is that they, like you had said, insert themselves into situations that the McCloskey, she flagged her husband multiple times with a loaded firearm with her finger on the trigger. Just breaking, 2 out of 4 of the 4 basic rules of firearms.
Right, of course.
These people are considered, they're put on pedestals and seen as, oh, look at them, defending their territory. And it's like, if you were in fear for your life, like Rittenhouse or like McCloskey, you would be, especially in McCloskey's case, having a literal castle behind them that they were afraid of, all these protesters breaking in. You wouldn't go outside. You were in their words, a tactical situation or whatever.
McCloskey operator.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's an entirely foolish endeavor that these people, they're putting the worst gun owners on a pedestal as people in favor of gun rights. And, in my opinion as well. It's very confusing because,
Well, it's not confusing. It's only confusing because you're trying to sort of place that type of logic. Let's be clear. This is not, Rittenhouse was not going out there to protect anything.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Let's be clear. He didn't know what was under threat when he got into his car with the gun. He wanted to show up and, face off with these people, with these protesters. There was he couldn't have articulated a certain thing. There could be trouble down there. I better get down there. Why are you going? Because I got a gun.
Yeah, and the whole logic being as well, and I've seen this as, something that they talk about as well a lot in the kind of gun part of YouTube is that, if you need to go somewhere, and you think you need to bring a gun to go there, you just shouldn't go.
Yeah.
As Vosh pointed out too.
Yeah, but that's not what this is about.
Well, this is.
That's the thing, is that his actions actually going there were explicitly political in that respect.
And I mean, this is the effect on gun culture that capitalism has, because it turned out that like those guys that liked hunting with a double-barreled shotgun like ducks on the weekend, that's not a big enough market. So you need to appeal to people who are going to buy the like military-looking stuff and pretend that they're going to, when they play their zombie video games, they think about doing that to people in real life.
Without a doubt. I appreciate the call. A friend used to live up next to me, upstate, had a whole series of weapons, and he brought out like an AR-15 with a scope, and not just with a scope, with the laser pointer. And I'm like, what's that for? Zombies? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is, they, all you need to do is look at the way that people are dressing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you wearing these, like, outfits when you go out there with your gun?
Punisher logos.
Like, or just like, I'm going to buff up when I go there. Like, what? If you're going out there to defend something, like, why are you taking the time to, I gotta dress like I'm in the military. I gotta dress like I'm Rambo.
So yeah, what do you guys say about this, since the video you brought up?
Yeah, well, it shows that a lot of the time when these gun nuts are pretending to think when it comes to guns, they often forget things like the gun safety rules that their heroes break constantly with their things.
Yeah.
It also means that they don't it shows that a lot of them don't understand things like the proper Second Amendment. They just believe what they want to believe about it.
Because they don't care about guns, gun safety and all that. I call them gun fuckers. Like, they're people, in my experience, they really just, like, fuck their guns. Like, they really give off that vibe to me. They're just addicted to guns, to the point where they don't even think about safety and all that crap. Like, Kyle was not smart, responsible, or anything when he went to that protest, especially with his gun. He wasn't supposed to have it. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was just in the wrong, full stop. That's not responsible. And guess what else? The vast majority of gun owners are reasonable, and most of them don't even agree with the gun nuts. It's just the gun nuts, though, that keep us from implementing policies to prevent, lower gun violence and death and all that, because of these fucking idiots.
Yeah.
You worship people that are not good. Like, come on. How can you seriously think Kyle was responsible and mature and all that crap for what he did? That was not. Even if you think what he did was self-defense, okay, but it still doesn't change the fact that he was in the wrong still. He shouldn't have been there. He wasn't supposed to have that gun and all that crap. Like, come on.
Yeah,
I honestly think we definitely need to probably talk about this with guns in the future, because American gun culture is just so bad, and most of it's because of people like these gun fuckers. So, is there anything else you want to talk about this?
I don't think there is at the moment.
Alright, so we're gonna wrap up this episode for right now, so see you guys next time for episode 32.
See you next time.